from Kim's Homestead here in Victoria, Australia. How are you today? Well, it's a beautiful sunny day outside and I've had some requests for making sourdough. So I thought I would start at the very beginning, and that is making sourdough starter. It's very, very simple. It's not very hard and it's not very complicated. So there's a few different methods. This is the one I use. So what do we need? Well, we're going to need a large glass jar. You never use metal in making sourdough, and you never use chlorinated water. You must always use either bottled water or dechlorinated water. So I will need obviously plain flour. Now I don't use bleached flour because the bleach in the flour will also kill your yeast. So plain unbleached flour. I actually go for a combination of flours when I'm starting my sourdough, and that's mainly to get a lot of different yeasts into your flour or into your starter mix. So it gives it a nice broad range of wild yeasts, and aside from what it gets from a good working kitchen. So the flour that I will be using is just a plain unbleached flour, and I'll also be using 2 wholemeal flours. One is just your normal organic wholemeal flour, and the other is called spelt. And if I could get einkorn, I would use that as well. But here, einkorn is like as rare as hen's teeth. So unless I'm willing to go online and onto eBay or something like that and buy, you know, just a tiny little packet for like $20 or $30, not worth it. So anyway, I will use what is available to me here. Same as you use what you have. Now if you don't have different flours, that's fine. Just use plain unbleached organic flour. And if you can't get organic, just use plain flour. So this is what we're going to do. Here I have a large jar. This was actually my biscuit jar, which I've now converted into my sourdough jar. And I also have a backup. This one here is just to keep my flour mixture in, so that I can feed my sourdough starter every day. So to begin with this, I have my plain dusting flour, which I'm going to put 1 cupful into the backup container. Now this is just to start your starter mixture. If you want to continue on with this, you continue on. But for me, this is what I start out with. I don't continue after the starter's going. I just use the plain organic flour. Now this is wholemeal flour, and I'm going to put roughly a cupful in. So I think that's what I've got left in this jar. Goes in there, and I also have the spelt. I'll just get some scissors. And 1 cupful will go in here. Now, I'm just going to mix these all together. Right, now to start our mixture, just going to use a small scoop. I don't need a whole lot of sourdough because it's only myself. So 1 small scoop, level it off, and into the jar it goes. This I will put into this container because when I feed this every day, I will be using that small scoop. It will be 1 scoop every day. Now, I have my little spatula to mix it, and here I have some very lukewarm water, which is filtered water, and all I do is pour it in there like that. I don't want it too sloppy, but I don't want it too dry either. It's probably a little runnier than what I would like, so I'm just going to use the spelt and just add a tad more. There we go. Now, the consistency that you're looking for would be like pancake batter. And that's it. Day 1. Now all I do is pop that on the side like that, or cover it with a tea towel, whatever. Probably just enough to keep any bugs out. Actually, that's what I'll do. I'll just throw a little cloth over the top. Right, here I have nice clean cloth. I'll throw over the top, rubber band. That'll keep the bugs out. And let it breathe. And that's it until tomorrow. Today is day 2 of our sourdough starter. Looking good so far. So we get our flour that we've mixed up. Our little 1/4 cup scoop. And we just add it to the jar. And here I have a 1/4 cup of filtered water. And we just mix that in. Get around all the edges. And making it look as if it's like pancake batter. That's it. We put the top back on with our rubber band and we place it on the kitchen bench top out of the sunlight. And that's it for day 2. I'll see you again day 3. Day 3 with our sourdough starter. And here we have our jar and our sourdough. Looking nice. No bubbles. There's 1 or 2 bubbles in there, but nothing really to speak of yet. So we have 1 cup or 1/4 cup of flour. And 1/4 cup of filtered water. Give it a good stir. Make sure all that dry flour is taken up. And it still looks the consistency of pancake batter. And there we go. Now I have a new little hat for it. Now we put it on the bench, away from the sunlight, and let it go for another day. Here we are, day 4 of our sourdough starter. and we have action. Around the sides there's quite a lot of action happening. Lots of bubbles in there. So we will feed our sourdough starter. Keep it nice and active. So we have 1 spoonful of flour mixture. Now there's quite a bit of starter in there, and I'm going to be wanting to make something soon, so I'm actually going to double this mixture, this flour, and get it nice and healthy. There we go, 2 spoonfuls of flour mixture. Now it's not active enough just yet to start your yeast for bread, but it won't be long. Now I've got 1 cup of filtered water. And 2 cups of filtered water. These are 1/4 cups. Now we'll give it a good stir. And there we go. And we'll put the lid back on, ready for tomorrow. Day 4, feeding our sourdough. And we're getting some really nice bubbles in there. And we're getting an amount to be able to use very shortly, probably tomorrow. Okay, so that's 1 scoop of flour. And a little bit of water. And give it a mix. Make sure all that flour is incorporated. Put his little hat on. And that's it for today. And we'll start taking out some discard tomorrow. Okay, it's day 5 and we have quite a good mixture going here. There's lots of bubbles, but it's not quite active enough for bread just yet. It won't be long, but there's quite a lot there. So I'm going to take the first lot of discard out. But I'm not throwing it away. I will use it. And that's what I have left. See? Now, what we have to do is just feed the mix. There's more than enough there. So we'll give it a good feed and get it nice and active. So 1 scoop of flour, now I'm only going to use a little bit of this water. It's actually 1/3 of a cup and not 1/4. So it'll make the mix a bit runny. So that should be plenty. And of course, we'll give it a stir and make it like a pancake batter. Go. And that's it. Day 5, put his little hat back on and put him away in the cupboard again. This one here, I will either make that into pancakes tomorrow, or I may even do some sourdough scones. So this I will pop in the fridge, and that will be for later. Okay, so we'll come back on day 6. And here we go, day 6 of our bread making adventure. And our yeast is looking very active and very bubbly. Very nice. So we're going to feed it one more time. And we'll probably make bread tomorrow. We'll start the process. There we go. 1 little small cup of flour and 1 of water, and mix well. There we go. That's it for tonight. And put the cap back on and put him away for tonight. Tomorrow, I think we start making bread. Okay, it's day 7 of our sourdough starter journey, and I think we're ready to make some bread. Now our sourdough is lovely and bubbly, and our sourdough starter is nice and bubbly. It's got a lot of bubbles going on in there, and I think we're ready to start our first loaf of bread with it. So first of all, we have to do what is called a pre-ferment. Now this recipe is not mine. It's actually off of venison for dinner, and it's called Kate's Soft Sourdough Master Recipe. Now this is a soft sourdough sandwich bread. So I will leave a link to it down in the description box for anyone want to make this recipe. So first of all, I have a nice big plastic container in here to start our pre-ferment. This is not a make today recipe. It will take a couple of days, so just be aware that making sourdough is it takes a couple of days to make a good sourdough loaf. So don't try and rush the process. Take your time with it, have a bit of fun with it. So let's start. Let's see, we need half a cup of warm water, which we have here. We need 2/3 of a cup of bread flour. There we go, 2/3. And I'll just give this a mix up. Right, now we need half a cup of sourdough starter. So I'll just give this a bit of a mix up before we start. There we go, half a cup, and we'll just pour that in. And we'll just mix it all in together. Okay, now I'll just get a little hat for it. Okay, I'm just covering it so that we don't get any bugs or flies into it. Now, I will put this aside and it will stay in a nice warm place until tomorrow morning. In the meantime, I can now start feeding my sourdough starter with just normal bread flour. So we'll get rid of what's in there. And we'll use our 1/3 cup to add to our flour, our starter. and it's a little dry. So we'll add just a little warm water. Now don't forget, you still need to use filtered water. Okay. We don't want it too sloppy, so I'll just add it as I need it. And we want this to be just like a firm batter. And there we go. That's ready for another loaf of bread, or sourdough scones, or pancakes, waffles, anything like that. I'll just pop the lid back on and pop him away. And that's it for your sourdough starter. You now have an active starter that you can start making things with, and it's only taken 7 days. So tomorrow we will continue with our bread making. Well, our pre-ferment has been done. It's matured overnight. It is very bubbly, very active. And there's good structure in those bubbles. So now we will mix up the dough for our bread. So first of all, we have to put together our butter and honey. So we have, let's see, 1 tablespoon of butter, that's a good sized tablespoon. We will need 1 teaspoon of salt. Now I don't like that much salt, so I'm actually reducing that amount to 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt. I'm using just pink Himalayan salt. And we need 1 tablespoon of honey. And yes, I should put oil in this first, but you can't lick the spoon then. And who doesn't like to lick the spoon full of honey? Okay, well that's half. Let's see if we can get a bit more out of that, eh? I think that jar full's done. Okay, so by the instructions it has melt the butter, honey and salt on low in a saucepan. When it's melted and combined, turn off the heat and then add your milk. Stir to combine. So we'll put this on, melt it, and then we'll come back. Okay, so the honey and the salt and the butter are now nicely melted. Now the temperature, you should be able to hold your finger in there very comfortably. Now, it calls for 3/4 of a cup of either milk or buttermilk or of some such. Now, you can replace milk with eggs, and I have an overabundance of eggs at the moment. 1 large egg like this takes the place of 1/2 a cup. So I'm going to put in 1 egg, I have a problem with my chooks, the whites actually stick inside the shell. So 1 large egg, and I have buttermilk. You can use ordinary milk, and I'm going to have 1/4 cup of milk. And we'll just mix that in. Not quite warm enough, so I'm actually going to turn the heat on again. Just for a few minutes to warm it up. That helps to get that sourdough starter nice and active. But you don't want it too hot that it's going to kill the yeast or the leavening agent in your sourdough starter. So if you're not sure, take its temperature. About 45 is a good temperature. Celcius, that is. Okay, that should be plenty. Yep, that's plenty. Right, now we will take this back to our mixing bowl. Okay, so add the warm liquid to the mixing bowl. And add your pre-ferment. And don't worry if it doesn't mix very well to begin with. It probably won't. See how stringy that is? That's what you want. Right, so now I'm going to get out my KitchenAid so it can help me mix it. At the moment I've just got the paddle attachment on because all I want to do is mix it in. When I'm ready to knead it, I'll change it over for the dough hook. Just on low and give it a mix. Okay, so now we'll start adding the flour, but bring you over here. See? It doesn't mix or combine very well until the flour is started. So now we will add 2 3/4 cups, 2 3/4 cups of all-purpose flour, or I'm using bread flour. Now I'm not going to add it all at once. I'm just going to add it a bit at a time. Put it down, you silly sod. Righto, that's mixed in, so now I'll add another cup. Now it's time to get in the dough hook. Let's see how tacky this mixture is. But it's not overly wet. So your kitchen may be different than mine. Mine is actually a very, very cold kitchen. Which means it's going to take the bread a lot longer to rise than it may take in your kitchen. Also, it may not take the full amount of flour. So each kitchen is different, and the lot of flour that you use to what your liquid you're using, whatever, it's different. So you just got to go by feel, and as you make bread more and more, you will get to know what your kitchen and what your bread feels and looks like. Also depends a lot on the day. Today is very overcast, and therefore the bread is not going to, well, it may hydrate a lot quicker than on a very dry day. So let's start with the dough hook on low. And what you're looking for is the bread or the bread dough to pull away from the sides. Goodness. It helps if your attachments don't fall off into the bread. Well, that was new. Okay, I don't think I'm going to have to put any more flour in. Let's just have a look. It's pulling away from the sides. It's still a little tacky, but it's not leaving that much on my fingers. So I'm going to call that good. Right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this sit for 15 minutes. Put his little hat on, and I'm just going to let that rest and let the gluten start forming. So we'll be back when it's time to knead it. Okay, we've been resting for a little while now. Now it is time to check our dough. And yes, it is stretchy, but see how it breaks apart? It's not quite ready yet. So now we will let the KitchenAid knead it for approximately 10 minutes. Right, that's 10 minutes. Okay, that's a beautiful soft dough. It's very stretchy, and we'll do the window pane test. That is, you stretch a piece of dough out and see if you can make a window pane. See how thin it is? It's still a little tacky and still coming apart just a little bit much. So I think I'll give it another 5 minutes. Okay, let's have another look. There we go. Very nice. Right, just wrap it into a ball. Right, now we tuck it up and say good night for the rest of the day. So, what I've done is I've heated my oven up to lukewarm, and I'm just going to pop him in there in a nice warm spot to rise for the rest of the day. Okay, well, I'm about to head off to bed, but before I do that, it's time to give our bread, or shape our bread, and get it ready for its second rise. So here we are. I'll just take the little hat off. That has filled up that bowl beautifully. What a lovely loaf it's turned out. So let's punch it down. Okay, so I might do is just put a very small amount of flour, because it's too tacky at the moment and it won't let me roll it into a ball. Now, I don't want to do much, just enough so that it will not stick to the bench. There we go, that's better. Okay, so now what we want to do is shape it out, make it nice and flat. Get it all that air out. Go, we can see a bit better now. Okay, so we've shaped it out. So what we do, one triangle, shut up you, and two triangle. And then I'll take it from this side. We roll, pull and roll, pull and roll. We want it nice and tight. Pull and roll, pull and roll. Roll it up into a nice long disc, nice long sausage. Right, here's our pan, or our loaf pan, and that needs greasing. So we'll just add some oil, give it a good old oil up. Up around the sides. And we're going to put in a baking paper sling. Right, now make sure that bread is nice and tight once again. And put it into your loaf pan. Right, then we put his little hat on. I just grease the inside of that hat so he doesn't stick to it, because he will come up nice and big. And then we tuck him into bed for the night. Now I'll just leave him, tuck him into the oven overnight, and he'll be ready to bake in the morning. So I will catch you then. Okay, well, it's nearly 9 a.m. the next morning, and the bread's had quite a long time to rise. It's beautifully risen. So now it's time to bake. So I'll preheat the oven to about 170, 180, and I'll just take the little hat off. Beautiful. Yep, it's fully risen. Right, I'll bring you back in when it's time to put it in the oven. Right, bread's now in the oven and it will stay there for about 35 to 40 minutes. Right, our bread seems to be ready. So I will just take it out and let it cool on the stove for a little while until it can be handled. But it's turned out very well. This time, if you wanted a soft crust, you would smear melted butter all over the top of it. I usually like a fairly hard crust, so I will be leaving it cool down as is. Right, so how do we know it's cooked? Well, we're going to take its internal temperature. "95 degrees. Well, here we are, all cooled off, and I will cut a slice so you can see what it's like. So it's very, very soft, very soft. So there we go. There's the crust. Very soft, very moist. And very, very light. I think the secret of this loaf is the very long ferment, because it's taken from day 7 of the yeast being ready to bake. So day 7 is when I made the leaven, and then the 2 days in the rising, and of course on the second day is when I baked it, or today. So it did take a full day and a night for the rising. There was 2 risings, and that's what's made it very light, very airy, and it's a perfect sandwich loaf. So what I will do now is the starter that you've got, if you don't want to be feeding it all the time and you don't want a great bulk in your fridge, I will show you another way of keeping your starter in the fridge that's not anywhere near as bulky or as high maintenance as your normal starter. It's what's called a dry starter. Okay, so here we are with our starter. Now the last time I fed this was when I made the leaven, and it's still very, very bubbly. It's got a good strong string to it, so it's actually a very active starter. So what I will do is I'll pour some of this in here. Basically you only need 30 grams, but I've got heaps of it, so I'll pour a bit more in there. Look at the string to that, that is beautiful. Don't worry about that part. That I will make some scones out of later on. Right, now the flour that we had before, what is left over, I'm going to use. But this time no water. Now, what you're going to do is introduce yourself to your starter. And you're going to mix it in with the flour until you have a firm dough. Now, if it needs a bit more wetness, just add a bit more of the starter that you've got there. Or if you have to, just a couple of drops of water. So we'll just work this in until all that flour is gone. And there we go. There is our sourdough starter. Now that I will just pop into a clean glass container, which takes up a lot less space in my fridge than that one. And that can stay in the fridge until you need to make another loaf of bread. Then all you do is you cut off a slice, 30 grams, which is roughly the size of a 50-cent piece, and that's what you start your next leavening with 1 cup of flour and 1 cup of water. You add your starter and you let it sit overnight, and you have your leavening ready for a loaf of bread the next day. And making sure that the flour and the liquid that you use is part of your bread recipe. You don't add the full ingredients of your bread recipe and the flour and the water. So that goes into my fridge now, and that will be there when I want to make another loaf of bread. Well, there we go. Making sourdough is not very difficult. There are a few ways, as you saw, of having the sourdough. You can either use the wet method where you've got to feed every day or every other day, or put it in the fridge and let it sit for a couple of months if need be. So long as it doesn't go mouldy, it will reactivate very quickly. So you can pop it in the freezer and freeze a section of your sourdough, so that if ever you kill your sourdough, you can pull some out of the freezer and get it going within a couple of days. You can also dehydrate it so that you can mix it up and start it, and it will go very quickly within a few days once again. You can turn it into a dry sourdough starter, which will last much longer in the fridge, and it's very, very easy to use. You don't have to feed it every single day like you do the other one. Not that you really have to feed that every day either, you don't. I feed mine once it's fully active and I've used whatever I want to use. I pop it into the fridge and leave it in there, and so long as I pull it out once a month and let it come to room temperature and then feed it, it's fine. I usually have it out for a couple of days at that time, and I'll feed it a couple of times, get the starter nice and active again, and I'll make sourdough pancakes or waffles or brownies or biscuits or scones or something out of the discard, and yeah, it's ready to go again. Or as I said, freeze it, dry it. Then if anything happens to your sourdough, you've still got it. So, any recipes that I've actually put online for my sourdough discard, I will leave a link to down below, and hopefully you'll enjoy some of those recipes while you're making your own sourdough and you've got discard to use. Anyway, that's all for now. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, please think about giving me a thumbs up. That would be really good. Or subscribe to my channel. I would very much appreciate it. Anyway, have a good day and happy baking. Bye for now.